Hello, everybody, and welcome to the International Euphonium Summit Living History Series. I'm your host, Nicholas Haupter von Heidi, and today we have our first in series with Matt Hightower, who's the current professor over at Florida State University for Tuba Euphonium. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, for those that aren't listening on the podcast yet, we actually dove in just a little bit earlier into this segment, and so we're going to rehash some of that and go forward. We are really enthusiastic and ready to go. So, the floor is yours, Matt Hightower.
Sure. So you'd like me, I guess, to start with just
Start with the
my
guitar.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess my first introduction to music was at about 3 years old. I played on my mom's guitar that she had in high school. She took some classical guitar lessons. It was just a small, very inexpensive nylon string guitar. And I loved to just kind of strum and sing on that. And until one day I dropped it on my toe, broke the toenail, and I no longer wanted anything to do with that. And so many years away from music, I guess, at that age. And then I took some informal piano lessons with my grandmother. My grandmother was a church liturgist and organist her whole career, and was at Immaculate Conception Church in Clarksville, Tennessee. And so she would teach me some piano, and similar to the guitar, no injuries involved, but I just kind of lost interest. I think just being that young, 5 or 6 years old, I could not focus. And so I think she eventually gave up with that. And all the while, my dad actually sings bass in a Southern gospel quartet. So around this time, that really starts to pick up when I'm like late elementary school. And so my mom went back to school very late in life. She's a nurse practitioner. And so she was kind of a non-traditional student, did a lot of her schooling in her mid to late 20s. So that meant weekends, we were often with my dad, which meant we were going to what they call singings, where the quartet goes and sings at various, Southern Baptist churches or whatever, in the Bible Belt where I grew up, Southern Kentucky, Tennessee, that area, quite popular. So I was hearing a lot of times in the car with my dad, just the bass lines to gospel songs. And so I think some of the part independence that I do as a composer or a tuba player maybe is informed by that. And similarly, if my dad wasn't available, if he was working, I would stay with my grandmother, and oftentimes with her at work at church, where they would have rehearsals and choir, or she'd be practicing the organ. Christmas time, it was always a big production. They'd hire in brass musicians and timpani and stuff. So music was a pretty ubiquitous force in my household growing up. My grandma was the professional musician, I guess, of the family, but my mom and dad both just enjoyed singing and were amateur musicians most of their life. And so lots of singing in the household, especially around holidays. So when I got into middle school, I did actually one in elementary school. We would do shows and things like that. So did a lot of singing in those. And I think my first award in music came in the 5th grade. I got the 5th grade elementary music award. I don't know what the criteria was for that. If I just showed up enough times, did enough things. I don't think there was really any grades involved, so I don't know how or when that appeared, but that was my first formal award in music. And then in 6th grade, I was actually in art. You could only do one elective in public school in Kentucky where I was at. We were on some sort of block system or something like that. And there was no rotation. So you were in whatever you were in for the duration of the year, whether that be, visual art or band or keyboard and choir, whatever that might be. So I was locked into art. I really liked to draw growing up, and I had a big interest in that. And at Christmas time, right before the switch for the semesters, my very, very serious 6th grade girlfriend was in the band, played clarinet, and a lot of my friends were in there too, and they said, you should join band, just we could all hang out together, that kind of thing. So I approached the band director, Richard Weaver, who was, I think, 2 years out from retirement, was not really caring so much, I guess, about who came and went in the band at the time. but I also had him for keyboarding, where we took, just piano. And I guess I did fine in that class. And he said, sure, yeah, you can join the band. He said, the only stipulation is you have to play trumpet, because my trumpets can't blow their own nose. So we need some help in that area. I think I wanted to play saxophone. I didn't really have any say in the matter. So I joined band the second semester of sixth grade. So everyone else had already learned how to count rhythms and read music. And I got kind of thrown in the deep end there. So I rented a trumpet. And, I remember those first couple of weeks of class, he would just, he would show me the fingerings for the trumpet when we would do scales, and eventually gave me a book so I could write the fingerings in. And then I really it was almost like Suzuki trumpet for me. I would just kind of learn by ear, because I missed the whole, this is what a rhythm is. This is what, I learned how to read the notes pretty quickly, and I started to memorize fingerings about, 6 months to a year in. But then I was probably a freshman in high school when I think someone sat me down and taught me rhythms. So
I'm curious about your engagement with band, and did you let your parents know that you're going to the band director at that time, at that semester switch, and your intention was to play saxophone? Did you communicate that to your parents, and then you came home with a trumpet?
kind of, I don't think I did communicate with them. I think it was a very spur of the moment thing. As a, whatever that was, 11 years old, 10 years old. I think, some friends approached me in the hallway, and I was pretty jazzed about it. So I think I just asked the band director. And then I think I came home and I said, hey, I think I'm going to join the band. And they were just like, yeah, that's fine. And so I think a couple of weeks later, we rented a trumpet or something. And a local music store in Clarksville, Tennessee was going out of business, I think in 7th grade. So they actually bought me a trumpet. It was a student model trumpet, but I think they got a pretty killer price on it. I'm sure it wasn't more than $300 or $400. They got me a King trumpet. I still have it to this day. I smashed the bell on it, and then they ironed it out for me. So it's got this really sleek design on the bell from that wrinkle. So yeah, no, they've always been pretty supportive. And so there was no red flags or arguments about it to them. It was, it was a class, and it's enriching. The arts were enriching. They were always supportive of that. So and it was pretty inexpensive. I didn't right out of the gate come home and say, hey, I'm going to play the bassoon or something like that. I think that was it was fine. Yeah.
How's practicing all those, going from like being kind of behind the ball on trumpet, then learning it in a Suzuki manner, as you put it, in taking that home and trying to regurgitate and replicate those experiences from school in the evening?
Yeah, I think that would have been the only time my parents were probably a little regretful of letting me join the band. I'm sure those first couple months were pretty painful. But yeah, no, I would just essentially come home. I don't think I had any music or books out at all. I would just come home, sit on my bedroom bed, and just try to remember what we did that day, finger through it on the trumpet, make those connections. Especially those first few weeks, I had really no idea what I was looking at on paper. And then eventually, it was almost like I was sounding things out. Like I had, a basic understanding of a language, and I was just kind of sounding it out and making sense of it as I've heard in conversation, I think. Yeah, no, I think from there, I kind of got hooked on the music thing. I would come home. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, just rural Kentucky, no internet, no cable. So, enjoyment was your own. So,
And pretty much no cell phone at that
oh,
time.
no. Yeah. So no cell phones yet. I think my mom had that first brick Nokia, but of course, no service. There's still, where they live now, no service. In 5G, times that we live in now, you still can't get reception where they live, or internet or cable. They have dishes and all those kinds of things to help kind of farm it in. But yeah, quite far out from civilization. So it was, CD-ROM encyclopedias, it was PBS, it was go outside and play dirt bikes, stomp in the mud, build something. We didn't even really live in a subdivision, so it's not even like ride your bike to the friend's house. It's, my next neighbor was probably 1.5 miles away, and the next neighbor with someone my age was probably more like 3 to 6 miles away. So So that meant there was lots of time for music and there was lots of time for practicing. And I would just get out that CD-ROM, that encyclopedia, and, research trumpet, and then heard some really great, especially, it was mostly jazz trumpeters that I think were on that, some Miles Davis and stuff, but got to hear some characteristic examples, I think, through that. And yeah, no, I think the thing that really got me hooked was when I did my first honor band, when I really found out that there's music beyond just my school, because I started to climb up the ranks pretty quickly just because I practiced a lot. I really enjoyed it. And I noticed that, if I practice a lot, there's like a reward. Like I move up a chair and I move up a chair and I move up a chair. And I think it was the first thing in my life where like it really was just based on work ethic. It's not like sports. Like I always wanted to be on the basketball team. Being from Kentucky, basketball is king. There's not much football to be said. There's no professional sport entities. There's no NFL or NBA teams or MLB teams, but there's like Kentucky basketball. That's like king in Kentucky. So I always wanted to play basketball, but I'm like 5'10" on a good day. So regardless to any skill I might have, I was never the tallest, never quite the fastest. And as much as I love the sport, that just was kind of out of the realm of possibility for me and what the good Lord gave me. So with music, I really liked that it was just an even playing field, I guess. And so that also was really a motivator. And when I made the district band, it was not a good chair. If there was 12 trumpets, I was probably 11th because I could still not count rhythms, but I think maybe pitch, tone, note accuracy, I'm sure the sight reading was just absolutely abysmal, but making that band was great.
Was that 7th grade?
This would have been 7th grade. Yeah. So 7th grade, I made the all district band, and that was the first year of eligibility. It was a 7th and 8th grade band. And I went with 2 other kids from my school, and it meant a couple days out of school to travel to Bowling Green, the big city, stay in a hotel, go to the mall, that kind of stuff that I didn't get to do super often. So all of that put together was just made for a pretty life-changing experience. And when it was all over, they made a CD. And they would mail you the CD, and I could listen to what we were, and that I think just kind of changed things forever for me when I could like hear myself played back and what the group sounded like on the other side. There's 3 bands, a middle school band, a 9-10 band, and an 11-12 band. And you could kind of hear the progression too, which was cool. So I'd listen to the whole CD, and I was hearing Holst for the first time and a lot of those standards. And I wore that CD until it was just like unrecognizable, just scratched to bits, on the other side. And I was really proud of that. And then it was that year that my band director retired, and they hired someone fresh out of college, and she was great. And I really admire her because I remember some difficult decisions that she handled, I thought, in a really, really great way. One of them was me. I saw an opportunity there. I was happy with trumpet. I had braces the whole time, and all of a sudden my range was shot because the braces came off. A little discouraged because I'd worked really hard, but I saw an opportunity to kind of get the saxophone going, because this new band director probably had no idea who played what. We would just show up with the instruments. My dad bought me a like $200 Antigua Winds tenor saxophone from a pawn shop. And I decided that it had like size 4 reeds. It was just an atrocity of an instrument and a situation, but by God, I was going to do it. So I thought it was John Coltrane or something. So I learned a little bit of saxophone over the summer. Same thing. I could probably read some notes, and I actually learned, I think, all my scales. And so like the technique was okay, but the sound was just awful. It was so flat, and just a giant reed and the bad mouthpiece and the bad instrument honking away back there. I'm sure it was just loud as could be. So they pretty quickly realized that was not really what I was originally on, but they kind of gave me an out. Like I'm sure many stories you've heard before with tuba players, it's rarely something they start on from 6th grade. They kind of find their way to the tuba and the euphonium, and I was the same. As the other band director left, he let me take the tuba home over the summer and kind of feel it out. And I really enjoyed the sound and the fact I was able to get a low B flat right away. And I even played it in the high school marching band. So I actually started marching in the high school marching band in 8th grade because, there was like 80 in my graduating class. It was a tiny high school. So they needed the numbers. Even with me and some other 8th graders marching, there's still probably 30 or 40 in the band. Really small. And so they told me, they're like, why don't you take this, the all district band audition again, take it on tenor sax and take it on tuba, and whichever one you get a higher chair on, you can play that. That'll be your instrument.
That's
And so I
really
did.
cool.
And what's funny was, out of all of the saxophones that auditioned, I was at the very bottom. We're talking alto, tenor, barry. My score was I even stopped in the audition and looked at the horn. Someone came out. They're like, it's fine. It's you. And they went back. So yeah, the worst saxophone audition, but I got first chair tuba. So that was a pretty clear deciding factor. And I remember that audition pretty vividly too, because it was, I think, a pretty just okay audition. I think I made an okay sound. I played all the right notes on the scales and the music, but it was nothing, I'm sure, to write home about. And they sounded really relieved behind the sheet, because I must have just been the only person to get that close to the right thing. So, but that's really what kind of started my low brass adventure, was that experience. And then another great year at all district band. And then the euphonium came into play. Once I got into high school after that, started playing some euphonium as well, and followed a similar path, took an audition on both, got like third chair euphonium, but then first chair tuba again. And so I kept trying to get away from the tuba, but it kind of kept pulling me back. Yeah. So
I have a few follow-up questions on
sure.
this as we wrap up this chapter going back into the middle school. Did you ever play with your grandma in the church with okay, when did that start?
I think eighth grade. That was my first paying gig. I think
Oh,
I got
that's
$100. Yeah, I played. So what happened was, of course, it was nepotism as much as anything else. I had no business playing this gig, but it was this the Immaculate Conception Church Christmas gig. There's this Marty Haugen arrangement of the Christmas Mass they would do every year, and it was just for brass quartet, 2 trumpets, 2 trombones, organ, choir, timpani, that kind of thing. So basically, she said, if you can just write the trombone 2-part down an octave, you can play it on tuba. And so I did. They put me in the back. I was on a really terrible school-owned tuba, and that was my first, gig, I guess.
So you actually had to write the part yourself?
Yeah, she had some manuscript paper in her office, and she just gave me the part, and she just said, just put it all down an octave, and you'll do that, because Marty Haugen's not going to do it. So I'm not going to do it. So if you want to do it, you're going to do it.
Okay, so was that your first introduction to writing and transposing, or even
I
touching
think,
paper?
yeah. I think for me, composition actually started kind of on guitar. I was still very much into
Not when
like,
you were 3 years old, though.
not when I was 3 years old. No, like Mozart, prodigy abilities here. That started in middle school. My dad had an old bass guitar I picked up. And so I would just sit and play, like they got me this old karaoke machine, and I would play along with some of the popular rock bands of the time, your Creed, your, I don't know, Alice in Chains and stuff. And I would play along with that on guitar and on bass. And so that's, I think, my probably earliest compositions were just me um, writing 4-bar, chord progressions with really silly lyrics over top that I'm sure at the time were really deep and meaningful to me in middle school. But that was probably my first foray into composition. And then when I was a freshman in high school, I asked for a copy of the Finale notation software for Christmas. And then from then on was when that really, really took off, because as I mentioned, there's nothing else to do at home. So I spent lots of time on the computer, either just researching things or, just on writing things out on Finale, things I'd heard before, trying to put them back together, or just really, really, really ridiculous stuff I knew no one would be ever able to play, just to hear the computer play it back. And my high school band director was also really supportive, and with a small band, and at the time, really no threat of copyright violation, he said, if you want to ever just write stuff for the pep band and like the basketball pep band, you're welcome to. So yeah, so I definitely wrote out some No Doubt and some Katy Perry and some very popular early 2000s pop music for our high school pep band, and would arrange for that, and some very, very short original things. And I would always play bass guitar and pep bands, so I would kind of be able to direct a little bit from that area. Those are probably my earliest composition memories, or kind of attempts at composing.
That's interesting. Pep band, and you're back in the basketball stage.
Oh yeah. Basketball is ubiquitous in my life. I just could never be on the court.
Well, I mean, with bass guitar, you're literally on the court because you
Pretty
can't be on
close. That's
stage.
right. Yeah.
That's
Even in college, I played bass guitar in the pep band, and I was the closest one. I was on the floor. Everyone else, the stands move up, so each row there's like a different instrument section, but drum set and guitar were on the floor. So I was right behind, usually the visitor side basketball goal. Um, so yeah, all the way through. And I went to Indiana for my master's, another big basketball program. And even Texas has been doing pretty well in basketball these days. So yeah.
wow, fantastic. Well, definitely appreciate you coming on and having your first in series with us. And for those that haven't visited his site and learn more about Matt Hightower, especially over at Florida State University, and be a part of the upcoming studio performance, which will be at the time of this recording. It's October 27th, 2023. The Euphoniums will have their studio recital on the 6th of November, and then the Tubas on the 10th of November. So stop by. And is there a specific location that y'all be in?
Yeah, I think both events are in Don Yanni Recital Hall. DRH is the abbreviation on all the markers at FSU.
Cool. And you can definitely find out more information on the page at www.internationaleuphoniumsummit.com/Matt-Hightower. And I'll leave all the interesting information about Matt and his beginnings and timeline for you to kind of divulge and find inspiration from. Wow, what an amazing story! I loved how you man, paid gig at 8th grade, huh? That's
Yeah, it helps to know the organizer. Yeah.
right.
Be a blood relative of the person who contracts the gig.
Love the connections, and I can't wait to cover your second in series, which will be your freshman year into high school, going forward, getting to learn about marching band, more about the pep band, and how you prepared for college, going to Indiana and stuff like that. Looking forward to having that. We'll continue this into the After Action podcast following this video recording. Be sure to check out Matt's YouTube station, which will have all his music and all the really awesome opportunities that you have to be a part of the Tuba Euphonium Ensemble world, especially at Florida State. So if you're interested, get in contact with him. For the time being, thank you for watching, and thank you, Matt, for joining us for your series.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Have a great day, everyone. See you on the flip.